Welcome back, psychotic killers. It's that time again. Time to delve into the twisted and unfathomable minds of those who walk among us, hiding monstrous secrets behind ordinary smiles. Today's episode uncovers a chilling and mysterious murder of Spermanzo, the high school senior whose bright future was violently stolen in the dead of the night. He was a kid with big dreams, big ambitions that could light up a room, and a smile that masked the darkness looming just beyond the surface. But dreams mean nothing to a predator lurking in the shadows, and for Spermanzo, the shadows came to claim him.
What happened that fateful night? Who would want him dead? And why does this story still haunt the halls of his school like a whisper in the dark? Get ready to grip the edge of your seat as we unravel the secrets, lies, and blood-chilling twists that turned a promising life into a midnight horror. This is not just a story, it's a descent into madness. Brace yourself, this is a tale of Spermanzo, and it's one you won't forget.
Okay, so Spermanzo came from a very broken household located in the heart of the city, the Tubos of Semnus. Unlike any other, it was full of divisions and splits.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's very heartbreaking. But I've heard his great-grandfather, Spermatogonia, had gone through the mitosis court to get a divorce and apparently won custody over his two children, Primus Cytos and Repgonia.
Didn't he also get 46 chroma acres of land?
Yes, his kids also inherited the 46 chroma acres of land.
But there's more. The lineage of divorces doesn't stop there. Apparently, his grandfather, Primus Cytos, had a ruthless divorce with his wife in the establishment of the House of Meiosis I court, and won custody over his child, Junior Cytos. But sadly, this child was unwanted and only inherited 23 chroma acres of land.
Like they say, like father, like son, Junior Cytos underwent a ruthless divorce in the House of Meiosis II, where he won custody over his 4 spermated sons, one of which was the young Spermanzo. Each son inherited 23 chroma acres of land.
After the household shattered, the 4 spermated siblings were taken in by the Sertoli family, cared for by their aunt, who raised them as their own. Sadly, this burden was too much for the Sertoli family, and they called it SPS.
Wait, what's SPS?
Don't you know about the Sperm Protective Services? The SPS had sadly removed the spermatid siblings and swam them away to the epididymis orphanage. This is where Spermanzo developed into the mature sperm he was.
So, did he end up finding a home?
No, actually, it didn't stop there. This crushed soul had been displaced all around the state of Gonadovia Andronesis before he was finally adopted in the land of Vagistonia.
But Spermanzo's journey was only just beginning. His path led him to a place few dared to venture, Vagistonia, a land shrouded in mystery and acid. It was a long journey that began with the treacherous hike up the vast death hill and into the passageways of the ejaculatorium ductus. Along the way, Spermanzo made a few friends. The Seminole, which offered him prostate glandins, which helped him summon uterine contractions upon his arrival, and with it, they gifted him fructose, the fuel he would need to endure his trek.
The journey grew darker as he approached the gates of Vagistonia, where dangers loomed and threats were constant. His friend prostate elder provided him with a powerful buffer, which prepared him for the acid barrier that lay ahead in Vagistonia. But before he could continue, his companion Sir Cowper appeared, sweeping the urethra clean, ensuring a smooth and unbroken path forward. This was just the last friend he saw before moving officially into the state of Vagistonia.
Wow, his friends really pulled him out of the dark and gave him guidance and light. I feel many of us nowadays need friends like that, which are so rare.
Yeah, for sure. But despite his horrendous childhood, Spermanzo settled into his adoptive family's home in Vagistonia. He settles into his new prestige high school of Falloppia. As he swams through the corridors of high school, he spots a well-rounded, beautiful, pear-shaped ovum, Ovanna. It was love at first sight.
Aww, this seems so adorable. He is finally being accepted and cared for by someone, especially after missing out on it throughout his whole childhood.
Wait, who's Ovanna again?
Well, let's take a step back. Ovanna is Spermanzo's sperma friend. She, unlike Spermanzo, was raised in luxury, growing up in the prestige Ovria chambers. At birth, she was known as Ovanna, a seemingly ordinary girl in her community, proudly carried 46 chromo green flags. But as she matured, something began to shift beneath the surface. During her primary oocyte years, Ovanna showed no signs of disturbance. She lived quietly, even gracefully, but it was in her secondary oocyte stage that subtle changes emerged. Her behavior became unpredictable. She began to display a dual-faced personality, a condition later called tripolar body syndrome.
Still, life in the ovary chambers was fast-paced. Her wealthy family was caught up in their careers and reputation, brushing off her strange behavior as stress or immaturity. It wasn't until Ovanna fully matured into an ova that her unsettling behavior could no longer be ignored. Her family began noticing odd patterns, emotional outbursts, shifts in identity, and finally brought her to the meiosis clinic. There, the chromoflag specialist revealed a shocking truth. Her original 46 chromo green flags had reduced to 23. With that, she was officially diagnosed with tripolar body personality syndrome, a rare and unstable condition that marked the final division of her transformation.
Oh, I guess you could say Ovanna was seen as a very interesting personality.
Yeah, many of her family members and even Spermanzo recalled her as a clingy and obsessive person. As her relationship with Spermanzo progressed, slowly unraveling her tangled obsessions and twisted desires, Ovanna was infatuated with the idea of having a zygote, an obsession that grew with each passing day. And being in love with someone as handsome as Spermanzo only fueled that fire. She would often drop eager hints or make sly jokes, desperately trying to nudge him toward the idea of nucleus fusion. But Spermanzo wouldn't budge. Some say he was afraid, scared to be fused so young, knowing the burden of a zygote would haunt him, especially with his complicated past and still being in high school.
Yeah, for sure. I can understand his perspective.
But this rejection shattered Ovanna. Witnesses recall her unraveling, switching between emotions like her three polar bodies. Unstable and erratic, her parents claimed she was even scribbling frantically in her journal at all hours of the day. Her handwriting jagged and wild, friends whispered of her growing rage. The constant arguments with Spermanzo intensified. For Ovanna, this was a tipping point, a descent into rage that no one had ever seen before, a darkness that now, in hindsight, seems all too telling.
On the 14th of ovulation, Ovanna had finally descended into madness. She was eager to get her zygote. This was just the start of her twisted, psychotic mind and actions. The day started off like any other, but today was special. It was the night of their senior grad. All the seniors gathered in Fallopia High School, where the party took an interesting turn between Spermanzo and Ovanna. As the party progressed and more students crowded the gym of Fallopia, she spotted Spermanzo, looking all drowsy and tired. She noticed his cup out in plain sight and smuggled a pill of Viagra into his cup.
From here, the events that could never be reversed occurred. Spermanzo was in such a high stage, also vulnerable and in the evil hands of Ovanna. She forcefully manhandled Spermanzo into the janitor closet, forcing Spermanzo's acrosome to diffuse into her zona pellucida, finally refusing and reaching her goal of the zygote.
Wait, she sexually assaulted him?
Yes, it was an oblivious act on her end, but it didn't stop there. She was stabbing him 21 times and eating his nuclei brain, digesting it one by one.
God damn, she a freak!
I guess her tripolar body personality syndrome kicked in. 1 second she was fine, and the next she's acting like a menace?
This wasn't the worst of it. It only got more twisted from here. The guilt of killing Spermanzo made Ovanna even more insane. Eyewitnesses who want to remain anonymous remember Ovanna almost in a maniac stage. She was blurting out cuss words and her whole body was frantically shaking. It was only when the detective interviewed her that she described it as a cleavage clash, seeing around 16 identical copies of herself and hearing the constant call-outs for someone named Morella.
Maybe it was the madness and guilt of killing Spermanzo, which finally took over.
The hallucinations became her new reality. The echoing voices of guilt grew louder and louder, driving her to flee Bagistonia and seek refuge into the state of Uterina. Within the state of Uterina, she was welcomed into a seemingly normal family, the Andreas, but something about them felt off, too warm and too inviting, almost like they had been expecting her.
Wait, what do you mean?
There, she was given a new identity, Blastula. Desperate to escape the chaos inside her mind, she tried to blend in, cloaking herself in a new outer layer of cells called Tropia, hoping to resemble one of the Andreas. But this was no ordinary family. It was a cult. And once she had accepted, there was no turning back. They used a drug called progesters, derived from the sacred herb known as HCG found in the Corium garden. This powerful substance had long-lasting effects, keeping Ovanna bound into the thickened walls of the house.
Ooh, Karma's a bitch.
Her connection to them grew stronger, more invasive. She didn't just join them, she latched on. They absorbed her and she embedded herself deep within their inner circle. Some say it wasn't a home, it was a trap.
Inside the outer shell, the guilt of killing Spermanzo and the fear of being caught festered, forming a secret inner identity named Embryo. This hidden core was her burden. The living nuclei of Spermanzo within her reminded her of her cruel acts. Quietly, Embryo grew and changed with the protective Tropia layer. Together, the two sides, Tropia and Embryo, formed something more powerful and dangerous, a complete false self known as a blastocyst. To outsiders, she may appear stable, whole, but those who looked closely could sense it. Beneath the surface, something was multiplying, a storm of guilt just waiting to break free.
This was it, the final descent. Ovanna had spiraled so deep into psychosis, there was no turning back. She was completely consumed by gastrulation, a psychotic disease that split her into 3 monstrous forms. Each layer consisted of Spermanzo's guilt. It was a forbidden corridor that allowed no other ovum except Ovanna to enter because she was the chosen one. She couldn't bleed her guts out. It was strange. She was evolving into something unrecognizable. Ecto, Meso, and Endo.
Ecto showed no mercy, folding and contorting into a neural tube that blossomed into a spinal cord and brain. Her skin blistered as Ecto took hold, raw, exposed, twitching with nerve endings on fire. Her brain pulsed with static, drowning in the chaos she tried to bury. Meso clawed its way through next, finally shaping her muscles into spasmic jolts, seizing with the weight of everything she'd done. Her heart erratic, pitter-platter, 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 like a ticking time bomb echoing in her chest. It didn't stop there. New limbs sprouted from her upper and lower body, twisting and unfurling with each frantic beat. Who was she becoming? Hands and feet she couldn't recognize, a body she could no longer predict. And then came Endo, the final layer, the one that dug deep. Her breathing turned into gasps, sharp and ragged. Her lungs burned, her gut twisted. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was her and Spermanzo's feelings. A new vision flickered before her eyes, strange and unearthly. She blinked, but the view remained sharper, broader, colors she'd never seen before. What were these eyes? Whose eyes were they?
Witnesses say she began to morph. Right there, her body, once calm, turned frantic, breaking, reforming, and convulsing. This wasn't Ovanna anymore. This was the birth of something else. A creature shaped by remorse, forced in madness, and built cell by cell from the crime she could never outrun. This transformation made Ovanna feel incredibly sick. She was desperately trying to look for a way to escape.
Did she escape?
She'd heard rumors about a strange enchanted flower called the yolk, a deep red bloom said to cure anything, even the mess of emotions twisted inside of her. At that point, Ovanna was desperate for a way out. The Alentois, quiet but always watching, offered to help, and led her through the placenta garden, which had grown out of the old Corion garden. The garden seemed to guide her, feeding her strength as she followed the path. Then she saw it. Right there in front of her, the yolk flower stood in full bloom, bright red and pulsing with life that consisted of red blood cell nutrients.
The world shifted. Da da da!
Suddenly, the Alentois latched onto her, its path fusing into a new living chain, an umbilical cord, which anchored her to the enchanted placenta garden. Through this cord, nutrients and oxygen flowed straight into her navel from the placenta garden, tying her even more tightly to the world she hoped to escape. And then, in the chaos, she was swallowed by a shimmering, translucent sac, a protective bubble filled with warm amniotic fluid. It wrapped around her like a mother's arm, cushioning every movement, protecting her from the growing pressures around her. Though she felt trapped, this fluid sanctuary was the only thing shielding her from destruction.
Now, Ovanna was no longer just surviving. She was being preserved, sustained. The extra layers that formed around her were not cages, but lifelines. Each guardian and guide had become part of the structure that would carry her forward.
OMG, what happened next?
Did she get caught?
Well, for that one, you're gonna have to tune in for next time. For now, bye-bye, psychotic killers!
Ovanna, Unana. Half of my heart is in Ovanna, Unana. He took me back to Philopia, yeah. Oh, but my heart is in Ovanna. My heart is in Ovanna. Ovanna, na, na, na. Guys, it wasn't recording!